Hello, folks. It's been a little while. And seems like every time it's been a little while, and I haven't been on here, and just things have gone by. Doesn't take much for something stupid to happen to kind of piss me off a little bit. So, I'm going to show you a couple things. You take Castlevania, and then add Metroid to it. What do we got? If your answer was Symphony of the Night, then congratulations. You have a genre that a lot of people hold dear to them. Coined MetroidVania. See, before I've even heard of this, I honestly referred to it as Castleroid. But Metroidvania, fine. Sounds, I don't have a problem with that. But apparently, some jackass named Joshua Rivera does. So, Joshua Rivera is a Kotaku editor, and he decided to post an article called Stop Calling Games Castlevania. Well, Metroidvania. It is as follows. Let's talk about one of my least favorite words in the video game lexicon, Metroidvania. Portmanteau combining the video game titles Metroid and Castlevania. It takes two made-up video game titles that are pretty cool and evocative on their own and inelegantly mashes them into something worse. And now that word is one we use to talk about a whole genre of incredible video games. Now, I will say that these video games are incredible. I will say that these video games are, to their own credit, incredible. However, complaining about what people use to name a type of game just sounds asinine. I mean, basically, they're taking two games, Castlevania with Metroid-like elements, the whole idea of dungeon crawling, exploring some castle, some world, some other place. It's huge, expansive, secrets that need to be discovered. And, you know, what else are you gonna fucking call it? And the problem that I find with this article is he doesn't even have a solution. He doesn't, dungeon exploring. I don't know. Castle exploring. World exploring. How about platform exploration with RPG elements? See, that's too much words. And everyone's talking about, he'll actually go on later in this article and talk about how, 5 syllables is too much to say, where his type of ideology is what prompted, people to use the term post-traumatic stress disorder. It used to be called shell shock back in the day, but no, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. And, you got to give credit to someone like George Carlin who called this out years ago. But anyway, back in the subject. I initially heard of this article, give credit where credit is due. Yellowflash pointed it out in a video on his own. But literally, this spoke to me because I'm a huge nut for the Castlevania series. I have essentially every game that was released in America. I'm that big of a fan. I even have the fucking SNES version of Dracula X. Is bad as it is, I had it because I wanted to have it. I don't have a lot of the imports. Now I have a couple, like I have this one, and I have this one, but it's because Symphony of the Night's my favorite game of all time. I am willing to buy every version that's available, even the shitty ones, like the Saturn port, just to experience it, just to support it. I will buy it new. I mean, not like new now on eBay at new, like factory seal prices, no, but when it's available digitally new, like Castlevania Requiem, as much as I hate Konami at this point, I will still buy it because I love this game. This game means a lot to me. This genre means a lot to me. Okay? And yes, I get it. Metroidvania, it's... I mean, what the fuck else are we supposed to call it? Okay? You take something as good as Metroid 3, and then you basically give it a Castlevania theme. It's essentially what Symphony of the Night is. But if you think about it, if you really think about it, we already had something similar with Simon's Quest, exploring around Romania, going from town to town, where everyone fucking hates you, and going to those specific mansions, getting the pieces, and then taking them to a remote location, throwing them in there, and killing Dracula once and for all. That was a lot of exploration. And you're meaning to tell me that that this was completely stolen from shit like Legend of Zelda? Like, really? But this whole idea of people getting like butthurt or offended or annoyed by the name of a genre. Okay, and they're saying, oh, it's because people who are new into video games aren't gonna get it. Okay, if they're asking, well, what's Metroidvania? Okay, well, it's simple. It's taking basically the concepts of gameplay from both Metroid and Castlevania and essentially putting them together. That's all you have to say. It's as easy as that, but no. He has to complain about it. He said, oh, we have to make it more, inclusive for everybody else. We have to be like, so, okay, if you're going to complain about it, find a fucking solution. Anyway, let's continue. So, paragraph 1's done. Move on to paragraph 2. Whoa. Let's go back up. Okay. Let us count the ways the word is a disaster. Aesthetically, it's miserable and inefficient. 5 syllables in the mouth and rackish in the ear. Worse, it is completely meaningless to anyone unfamiliar with either of its root words. Again, if people don't understand it, all they have to do is ask. Just because you look at a cover and be like, I wonder what that is. And not even... most of these games aren't even going to say Metroidvania on the cover itself. You're getting that from websites, from magazines that are familiar with the genre. They'll tell you something completely different. They'll say, you're exploring this big-ass castle, finding secrets, obtaining different kinds of weapons and magic and familiars and fighting all these enemies and whatnot. They're not going to say, oh yeah, it's Metroidvania. They're not going to say that. That's what we invented. And when most of us are describing something like a Symphony of the Night or, a Circle of the Moon, or hell, going by right now, which I'm assuming may be part of the reason why this is being talked about, Bloodstained, Metroidvania is the easiest thing to say. It's easy. Oh yeah, so 5 syllables. Fuck you and your 5 syllables. That's not hard to say at all. When you're saying shit like gender fluid and inclusivity and all these other fucking big filled out words that you include in this goddamn article, and you're complaining about Metroidvania being 5 syllables being too much, Like later on in the article, you're saying, oh, they could call it Metro Android Castle Transylvania. Why don't you fucking have a dick in your mouth? Jesus Christ. Anyway. Okay. Words which are also portentous. Like, seriously, really? I mean, did you have your dictionary and your thesaurus right next to you when you were writing this garbage? Metroid, the story goes, is a combination of the words Metro and Android. Castlevania, meanwhile, is a merging of the words Castle and Transylvania into something that actually worked out pretty well. Imagine stringing all of those words individually. Metro, Android, Castle, Transylvania. It is both, one, way cooler, and two, far too much to dump on a person and expect them to know what you mean. You're giving me a goddamn headache. Like, seriously. Seriously. What's the fucking problem with just calling it MetroidVania? Hell, even when I didn't even hear of the term before and I just said Castleroid. You know? I mean, it makes sense. What's the problem with merging or shipping two terms together? I mean, they do it all the time, and now you're having a problem with this? You know, I know back in the day when first-person shooters, a lot of them were called Doom clones. You know, because Doom was one of the biggest ones. You know, it was very recognizable, and, you know, that was a one-syllable thing. It's not like they're saying Wolfenstein clone. They're saying Doom clone. You know, and then they brought in first-person shooter. I mean, it makes sense, and then FPS, sure. But you can't treat everyone as in they've never played a fucking game before. And all those people, the normies, if you will, are probably not going to go for a game like this firsthand. Okay? Maybe they'll go for a platform like Mario, or maybe they'll go for a beat-em-up like fucking God of War, first-person shooter like fucking Call of Duty, a racing game, a fucking Madden game. But, you know, oh my God, I am just so fucking tongue-tied over this. The more I read into this, the more it pisses me off. And maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it really shouldn't piss me off. But the fact that he's having a problem with this and that this term needs to go. Everyone's talking about how all these things are problematic, and this is problematic, and that's problematic. Anyway, years of use have acclaimed people who play and talk about games a lot to the convenience of Metroidvania. It is convenient. It's literally just putting it into one word, Metroidvania. I mean, it's not a word, it's a made-up word, but still. That sums up everything you need to know. Okay? It's got the exploration of Metroid, and it's got the story, and honestly the feel of Castlevania. And it doesn't hurt that the game that it most often points to, 1997's Castlevania Symphony of the Night, was a watershed moment in video games, reinventing one classic franchise by borrowing literally from another. And again, I don't see the problem with turning something on its head. They did it again with Lords of Shadow when they essentially borrowed from not only God of War, but Shadow of the Colossus. It happens. And I'm not even saying he's having a problem with this. But, I mean, literally, that's why they coined it that. The borrowing, ironically, came not so much from Metroid, but from The Legend of Zelda. Now, see, this is where I'm like, okay, has this person even played Simon's Quest? I mean, honestly, you have to question anyone from Kotaku that they actually play video games in general, and they just bitch about them. But literally, I mean, have they played Simon's Quest? Because Simon's Quest had RPG elements, Simon's Quest had exploration, Simon's Quest had all the same shit that a lot of these Metroidvania games have. But, okay, so whatever. So influential was Symphony that the term Metroidvania, which was apparently cooked up and popularized by former OneUp.com writer Scott Sharkey and Jeremy Parrish, sometime in the early 2000s, was used to denote a formal movement of video game design with Symphony of the Night as the template. And you know what? Symphony of the Night was such a huge important game in the industry that a lot of games ever since borrowed a lot from it. So you had the other Castlevania games that came out since: Circle of the Moon, Harmony of Dissonance, Aria, Dawn of Sorrow, Portrait of Ruin, Order of Ecclesia. And then you have spiritual games, something like Rogue Legacy, or the Shantae series, or La Mulana, or, as you know, Bloodstained. So yeah, there is a whole bunch of these games that fit this mold. And again, as I keep on needing to stress, what is the problem with associating these games with the two that it basically takes from? I mean, what are they going to call it? What are they going to call the genre, huh? Come on, Josh. You're complaining about this, so maybe give us a fucking answer. Okay, so, moving on. Here's where my other problem with Metroidvania comes into play. It's at odds with the language we use to talk about video game genre. Video game genres tend to be categories of interaction. They describe what you do in a video game at a glance. You're right. You're absolutely right. And at a glance, when you see the term Metroidvania, it's right there. Okay, so continuing on. A first-person shooter puts a gun in a character's hands and a camera where their eyes would be. A turn-based strategy game involves board game-style interactions in the service of a specific goal. These aren't perfect terms. They're not as evocative as genres in categories in, say, film, where terms like horror, romance, and comedy describe emotions and feelings that you might expect to experience as a viewer. But there's a logic to them, and they serve a purpose, establishing the ground rules of how you're going to interact with the game. In that way, video game genre terms are most similar to genres of music, which use a certain set of basic rules for works in categories both broad and specific. Blues tunes will likely use blues scales and lots of improvisation. Conversely, Baroque four-part chorals will adhere to an extremely rigid set of rules of composition. I used to write about video games and publications geared towards people who didn't necessarily play a lot of games. Okay, sure. Honestly, I used to write about games. Oh, obviously you don't anymore because you're employed by Kotaku. Okay. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about words that we've become accustomed to, but are really just nonsense to anyone outside this particular subculture. Dude, you could even say shit like turn-based and first-person shooter, action platformer, beat 'em up, side-scrolling. Well, okay, people that aren't familiar with games might still not understand these terms anyway. I mean, you can't say every puzzle game is going to be Tetris. And that's what you get with a lot of puzzle games. I mean, just right there, say puzzle games. Yeah, it's right there. That's the genre. But when you look at something like Columns, or something like Luminesce, or something like Candy Crush. Well, not Candy Crush. Candy Crush is a little bit different at this point. But still, a lot of people look at that and be like, oh, it's like Tetris. You know? But anyway, where are we at on this? Publications. Okay. outside anyone in this particular subculture. In real life, too, I've seen how quickly someone's eyes can glaze over when they're presented with something outside their comfort zone. Reducing those potential pain points in the way we talk about games can do a lot to help more people join in on the conversation, especially if it's as painless as ditching a word like MetroidVania. You're saying it's completely painless to ditch a word like Metroidvania. As I said before, you moron. What the fuck are you going to call it afterwards? Okay? Sure, you're going to ditch the word Metroidvania. Describe to me in just, I don't know, 5 words what a game like Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance is. Tell me. Shouldn't be hard. I mean, you're obviously the savior of this apparent dilemma. While we're waiting on that, let's continue on. This is the last bit of this article. Genre terms are more for our benefit than the art in question. Genre is a loose system that we have for talking about similar works and establishing canon, as academic exercise more than an artistic one. Those conversations are valuable and sometimes even vital works of scholarship, but they also tend to be exclusive, understandable only to those already steeped in the culture. Okay, so take sports, for instance. When you're talking about baseball and you hear terms like RBI and earn run average and all that shit, or you know, for fucking basketball with layups and rebounds, and you know, for football with all the different types of passes and plays that are in there. Not everyone's going to understand what those are either. Are you going to tell them they need to rework stuff so it makes it more sense for people that don't watch it? You're always going to get this issue where you'll run into people that don't understand exactly what they're looking into. You can't save everybody. The only thing you can do is educate them on it. So, if someone doesn't understand what the term Metroidvania is, you can say, well, it's basically a combination of Metroid and Castlevania, basically taking all the best aspects of them and putting them together. And if they ask, well, what's Metroid? Okay, well, that is basically a game where you're an alien bounty hunter going into an alien planet and exterminating this alien race called the Metroids, you know, where you're taking on space pirates. And I was like, what's Castlevania? Oh, well, you are a vampire hunter basically going into Dracula's castle to kill him. And, you know, he's being defended by, you know, the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster, Medusa, Death himself. You know, you shouldn't have a problem explaining things to people, but you know, we have this era where people are like, oh, they have to look this shit up themselves, but you know, they don't want to at the same time because it's too hard. They have to make things easy. So, lastly, video games need to be easier to parse, not harder. We talk a lot about diversity and inclusion in games. We, as in who? Not me. I don't talk about diversity in games. Maybe you do. That's maybe because you don't fucking play games at all. Diversity and inclusion. Oh, we need to have everybody fucking included. This is why I do not go into Kotaku and Polygon and fucking gay-ass forum places like NeoGAF and Reset Era. All they do is give you these fucking buzzwords to piss people off because they have to have this moral grandstand and basically step up on their soapbox and bitch about everything. Well, I can do that too. I can bitch on the internet just as much as the rest of us. Diversity and inclusion in games. Oh, you're a game now, huh? Yeah, you're a dumb game. How we games could be a better, more welcoming space if we just figured out a way to represent more perspectives in both the games we play and the studios that make them. This isn't the problem with the studio. They're not the ones that coined the phrase. Yeah, Koji Igarashi ended up kind of jumping in on it with MetroidVania, and you know what? He has every right to do that because he's essentially the one that popularized it in the first place. These are necessary, urgent steps. No, they're not. These are not necessary, urgent steps. You're literally bitching about nothing. This was a waste of an article. I cannot believe that a website like Kotaku actually paid you to write this. But I also wonder how many people have never bothered because we've spent all this time using the wrong words. The wrong words. The wrong words. It's just like Carlin said. All these bad words, right? The words are the problems. And then us, in our complacency, to say, oh, we don't need to change it. It's probably the same kind of jackass that says, oh, we need to change that word to a personal cover. You know? God, I love that Carlin skit. What would a ladies' man be? A person's person? That would make a He-Man and It person. This was incredibly headache-inducing. This was incredibly headache-inducing. I cannot believe that someone actually thought that this was something meaningful for them to write. You are a moron, Josh. See, you're complaining about the term MetroidVania. You know what? I think you have earned the term that I'm going to give you. Okay? KotakuTard. KotakuTard. That's 4 syllables. That's one less to say. So maybe that'd be easier for you since MetroidVania is a little too much. But it combines the best aspect of you. Yeah. Fucking moron. Jesus Christ. And this is the reason why we cannot have nice things. So with that said, have a great day, guys. And I will talk at you again very soon.